Hey there and welcome back. So let's see if we can install the dependencies for Playwright. We can see we got the package JSON file here. And what we need to do is we can go to the terminal and we can write npm init, and then we can put Playwright latest. So we're going to get the newest version of Playwright. So let's hit enter on that. And then Playwright, the installer, will ask a couple of questions, how we want to set up this testing framework. So first off, where to put your end-to-end test. It says tests folder. That seems to be okay. If we want to add a GitHub Actions workflow, it is set for false. This is okay. Maybe we can do this later on. And then install Playwright browsers. We can also do this manually afterwards. I'm not going to do this right now, so I'm going to answer no to this. And then we can see that it will install the actual framework, and then it's going to create a configuration file called playwright.config.ts right here. And it has also added Playwright as a dev dependency. And then it will show us a lot of different commands we can run to run the test, and also to display it in different ways in the UI or in the browser, or just in a headless mode. Okay, so now we have the configuration file, we have the test library here, we have one example test here. And then we also have some test examples that you can look on. Otherwise, we can just remove them. So this is okay for now. Let me just clear the terminal here. And yeah, first off, what we need to do, because we're not going to use all of Playwright, because this is a very comprehensive framework. And it will be able to do testing on a lot of different browsers, and we're not going to need it for this backend here. So we can see, if we go to the Playwright config file here, that we have projects that are defined for Chromium, Firefox, and WebKit. And I'm just going to, for this, I'm just going to remove them, because we're not going to use it for this. But of course, if you are going to do some front-end testing, maybe this could be very relevant for you. Then we can also see that now it says we're not using the devices. Let me just remove the devices here. It will define a configuration function here where it says the test directory is called tests, which makes sense. And we can also see a lot of different settings about how it should behave, the reporter, and also, and more importantly also, we can actually run a web server when we run our test. So this is very handy, because when we have a backend API, we need to have the API running to actually test the routes. So that could come into handy. So I'm just going to make some extra changes here in the configuration to suit our needs here. So it also says fully parallel, because you can run these tests in parallel. I'm going to mark this with false instead, because we need to run some tests of the endpoints that will create data into the database, and it is nice to have control of how we run these tests and how we add them to the database, and we delete them, and we assert that we have the correct number of documents in our database. So right now I'm going to mark this with false, but normally if you're doing unit testing or isolated testing, it is nice that you can run them in parallel actually. Okay, so what else we need? We need also test match, and this is something we use for defining the order of the test we want to run. So we're going to make a test list, a TS file that will where we can control the flow of the tests when we get to it. And then yeah, we can also set some extra settings here. We can also set a timeout if we are dependent on, let's say we are dependent on Mongo Atlas to save the data or return some data. There might be a network lag or delay. We might need to adjust this timeout here. Then we also have, you can see here, we have base URL to use in actions like this. We're going to put this with the base URL, and we're just going to mark this with, I know it says localhost in the IP, but let's put it with 4000 when we are testing. So we have that. Let me see, I think it's, yeah, just need to save it. And finally, let's just modify the web server, because we need the web server to be able to start our API when we run the test. So we have a command here that we can run, and it says npm run start. I think we will modify this. So we're going to make this. We will make this to test npm run test db, because we're going to use a test database to run these tests on. So we don't use the production database. We're going to modify this with localhost 4000 and /API. Yes, and let's see here, reuse existing server. Yeah, it should always start a new server for us. So let's see here, URL, localhost, it should be all right for this. So yes, okay, so, and we might get into this again and modify it if it's not working out okay. But now we have set up the configuration file for Playwright, and we also have installed the dependencies. So I think this is enough for this video. In the next video, we will create a new an extra env file to hold the database host URL for the test database. So hope you make this work and have fun. Happy coding. Bye bye.